right. Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. We know that it's kind of a strange time and we all have a lot of other kind of competing priorities and stressors going on. So we do appreciate that you're here with us today. And we hope this workshop will help you as you prepare to seek out and apply for jobs in your area of interest. And I will say, although today's content will have a spotlight on sustainability related careers, everything, all of the tips that we're going to share can easily be applied to any field that you're interested in. So today we will provide some tips for your job search. We will review the key components of a resume, explain how to best tailor your resume for the jobs that are interesting to you, and then walk you through how to create a cover letter. And we're also going to provide a link to an activity where you will be able to play the role of a hiring employer to learn how much time is actually spent reviewing each resume. And in this activity, you get to determine who you would hire based on their resume alone. So this can be pretty eye-opening for somebody who's never been on that side of the hiring process. If you do have questions during our presentation, please just send them through the chat box, and we are going to allow time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So to introduce ourselves, today's hosts are myself, Emma Waugh, we have Jen Wells and Camille Hamrick from the College of Charleston Career Center. My name is Emma Waugh, and I am the Associate Director for Career Education. I worked at the Career Center for a little over 3 years and have been working in career services since 2012.
And hi, I'm Jen Wells, the Assistant Director for Career Education, and I've been at the College of Charleston since this past January 2020, but I've been working in higher education and predominantly in career services for about 25 years.
Hey everybody, my name is Camille Hamrick and I am a career counselor. I've been working in various higher education settings since graduating college, but I've been in career services for almost 2 years. I joined CFC's Career Center staff this past September.
All right, so let's talk about the job search to start, and then where to even start with the job search. So if you take a look at this statistic here, that 80% of jobs are never posted publicly. So this can be surprising to a lot of people because you would think, okay, to find a job, I'm just going to go online, I'm going to search, see what's open. And while that can absolutely find you a job, if you're only doing that, if you're only looking at positions that are currently posted, you might only be accessing 20% of what's actually out there. And if you think about the reason behind this, it does start to make sense. So if you were an employer, you wanted to hire somebody, wouldn't you rather hire someone who was recommended by somebody you trust, referred to you by somebody who works at your company, versus an applicant that you really know nothing about other than looking at their application? So if you've ever heard, it's not what you know, it's who you know, that's what this is getting at. And really, like, finding a job is first and foremost all about networking. So here are just some examples of how you can begin to network, especially while you're a student at CFC. Networking with employers, when possible, is extremely helpful. So at CFC, the Career Center invites companies to join us on campus or virtually nowadays to meet with students who are interested in working for them. And this might be a large event like the career fair that happens every semester, where you're able to speak with multiple employers in a short period of time. Or it could be one employer on campus at a time for an info session or an info table, or an employer in residence. So during the employer in residence program, students can have their resume reviewed or their career questions answered by whichever employer is visiting that day. So that's a really great way to get feedback on your resume, but also start building those connections in a lower pressure environment with employers. And we recommend just checking the events calendar that we have on our homepage to see who's on the schedule each week. That's going to start back up in the fall. And we have also been offering a lot of virtual networking events and job fairs, which will definitely continue. Another way to network is by getting involved in professional organizations. So we have listed some examples on this slide of organizations that are related to sustainability, but this is definitely not an exhaustive list. There are almost countless examples out there. So we encourage you to explore on your own to find the organizations that are the most relevant to you and your specific career goals. Once you have identified some good ones, go ahead and check out the organization's websites, become a member if you're able to afford it. Some of them have a student membership option, which is a little bit more affordable. And you can also find their LinkedIn groups, which are free to join, and start making connections that way. Many of the websites for these organizations do have a job search page that, for the most part, you're able to access and search for job postings without actually being a member of that organization. So that's kind of a nice little loophole. And then LinkedIn. So if you haven't heard of LinkedIn, I'm sure you have, but basically it's an online platform that was literally built for networking. So that is what it is really good for. As you start to meet new people and expand your network, connecting with them on LinkedIn lets you easily keep in touch with them and stay updated on what they're up to professionally. So as you start adding people to your network on LinkedIn, the system will start suggesting other people to connect with based on your mutual connections. So you can use this to start building out your network. You can also join groups related to your desired field, which often have members who post information, start discussions within that group. One of my favorite features of LinkedIn is the alumni search. So every college has a LinkedIn page, including College of Charleston. If you go to the CofC page and then click alumni, you will be shown a database of all 60,000 plus CofC alumni who are on LinkedIn. You can narrow this list down based on their major or their company, as well as their location and career field. You can also search by keyword. So this is a really great way to identify people that you might want to connect with or even request an informational interview with. And the best part about it is you already have something in common with them because of the College of Charleston connection. So it's a little bit less awkward to just message them out of the blue. And I could go on like a long time about LinkedIn, but I'm going to save that for the next part of this workshop series when we talk a little bit more about how to leverage LinkedIn to network and find jobs. So here are some additional methods of job searching. Direct contact. So this is something I feel is overlooked a lot of the time. If you're taking more of a passive approach where you're kind of waiting to see what's already posted, you are able to make a list of target companies that you're interested in and find a way to reach out to them, even if they don't have anything posted at the time. And you can just ask them about open positions. Maybe they are listed somewhere else that you're not able to locate, or maybe just asking them about what their typical application process looks like. This can really help put you on the map, so to speak. So if you reach out to a company, even if there's not an opportunity at that time, maybe they'll remember you, down the line when they do have an open position and then you apply to it. Publications. So this can seem maybe outdated to some people, searching through the classified section in the newspaper, but a lot of publications do still print job ads. So this is really helpful if you're interested in a certain location. So maybe finding some of the local publications for that city. That might give you some access to jobs that might not be posted, widely. You can also look at, academic journals, more professional publications to see if they have any jobs posted as well. Recruiters and staffing firms. So the Career Center doesn't do a whole lot with recruiters or staffing firms besides, allowing them to post their positions to our job sites. So we don't necessarily have like a list of ones we recommend. So the best advice we have is, see if you can find reviews online. Try to avoid any firm that is charging you, the job seeker. Oftentimes they charge the companies that are, using them to find applicants, but we wouldn't necessarily recommend paying them to help you find a job. So just kind of, use your common sense, do your due diligence in researching them before proceeding. Internal campaigning. So this is kind of a clever way to get your foot in the door. If there isn't a job posted somewhere that you would like to work, see if they have a part-time job or an internship or a volunteer opportunity that will let you, kind of prove yourself and get to know the people that work there. That might not be your ideal role to start out with, but it is going to get you access to the people that are going to be the decision makers whenever they do have that kind of dream role available. And then finally, internet resources. So there are so many out there. On here, we've listed sort of like the bigger ones. So Indeed and LinkedIn, they're kind of taking job postings from, all over the internet and posting them in one place. Going Global is a resource that the Career Center subscribes to and has it available for students to use. This is helpful if you're looking for work abroad or in a specific city, whether it's in the US or outside the US. What can I do with this major is a resource that is, judging from the name, it's helpful to figure out, what are your career options for each major. But what's really nice is that within each major page, it shows you certain job sites that are related to those fields. So that's really helpful as well. And then of course we do list a lot of other resources on our website. All right, so a few more resources that you can use online. I do want to talk about Handshake. So hopefully you've heard of Handshake before. We've been using it for, I think, about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. And Handshake is the job search platform that the Career Center manages. So we have full control over what's posted and what students see when they log in. And every student has access to Handshake. You automatically receive an account when you enroll in CofC. And we have 8,500 companies across the US that are connected with us in Handshake, and that list continues to grow every day. We also see about 50 or more new job postings added each day in Handshake. So each of these positions are carefully reviewed by us. So we have the power to either approve them or decline them. We want to make sure that any posting in Handshake is relevant to our students. And so we're not just going to let any job come through, basically. So you can use this platform to find jobs, of course, but also you're able to sign up for career fairs and events that we may be doing with employers on campus. So we always recommend just keeping an eye on what's going on in Handshake. And then when it comes to the online job search, some of the bigger sites that I mentioned, like Indeed and LinkedIn, they can be a bit overwhelming. So if you do a search on one of those sites, you might have hundreds or thousands of results that you have to kind of sift through. They might not really all be relevant to what you searched for. So it can be helpful to find some more industry-focused sites to just narrow down that field a little bit. So the other websites that we listed on this slide are targeted at a specific area. It may be environmental sustainability, it may be social justice or nonprofit organizations, and so on. So although you wouldn't find the same volume of results on these sites as you would on something like LinkedIn, they hopefully would be quite relevant to your interests.
All right, great. So hopefully these methods will help you find a position that you're really interested in and that you want to apply for. And once you do find a position that you're ready to apply for, you'll of course need to be prepared to submit a resume. And the purpose of a resume is really to demonstrate how you align with the position requirements so that the employer will ultimately invite you to interview. So it provides a snapshot of your education and your experience to briefly outline your qualifications. All right, so when you begin planning what to include in your resume, there are some standard components to include. So that would be, of course, your contact information, maybe an objective or a summary section, your educational background and experiences, technical skills or certifications you may have, as well as involvement. So some of these sections are optional just because everyone's experiences are different, and that can lead to different types of resumes and different structures. So we'll talk a little bit about that in more detail later in the presentation. But today we'll go into depth with each section and outline what's necessary to include. We really find this important just because if you've ever researched how to write a resume, you've probably read online articles that say conflicting things about what to do. So today we really hope to give you a clear explanation on how to format your resume. So we're going to start by addressing the contact information. So it may seem obvious to include contact information, but I've actually seen some individuals who are so focused on crafting their experience section that they completely forget to include this. So including contact information, of course, is essential because it allows the employer to know how to contact you to secure the interview, which, like we mentioned before, is the purpose of your resume. So with that being said, be sure to include your contact information at the top of your resume. So you want to have your first and last name, which can be slightly bigger than the rest of your content, but don't make it too large. This can be distracting, and it can also take away valuable space that you'll need to describe your qualifications. Also include your location. As a college student, this may be a little bit trickier just because you might have a home address and a college address. So I would recommend listing the address where you would be located if you were to receive the position. So for instance, if you were applying for a summer position back home, then you might want to list your home address. But if you're applying for a position elsewhere, you can really list either address. You probably want to list the one where you spend the majority of your time. Of course, list your phone number as well as your email address. List the email address that you check the most frequently. So if that is your CofC email address, then definitely list that. If it's a personal account, that's okay as well. Just make sure that it sounds professional. You don't want to list both a personal address as well as your CofC address because you want the employer to be clear about which email to contact if they wanted to reach out to secure an interview with you. If you have a polished, active LinkedIn account or an online portfolio, you can include that URL here as well, but this is an optional section. So if you use either of these accounts frequently, then it might be helpful to include it. But if you don't use it quite as frequently, or you're not quite sure if you're ready for an employer to view your LinkedIn or online portfolio, you can leave that off.
After your contact information at the top, many people like to see something like a summary section as the first piece of the resume content. This can also be called a profile, a summary of qualifications, or an objective. This section is optional, but it can be a nice way to focus your resume toward each job for which you apply. Usually included in a summary section are the skills and experience you most want to highlight. It should consist of a few sentences or bullet points. The goal of your summary is to quickly grab the reader's attention and give them an idea of who you are and what you bring to the table. You want them to see your summary, realize you're qualified and a good fit for the job, and want to keep reading to find out more about you. Before you can write a good summary, you must understand what the employer is looking for. This means that your summary should probably change based on each new job you apply for. Tailoring parts of your resume to fit the job is a key theme that we will continue to talk about during this presentation. As with the rest of your resume, we recommend avoiding first-person pronouns in this section. So let's look at an example of a resume summary. Example 1, motivated student with a strong desire to implement sustainable practices in the community, well-versed in green supply chain management and adept at working as part of a team to accomplish goals. The first example starts out strong by mentioning the applicant's soft skills, teamwork, and motivation, and skills directly related to sustainability, green supply chain management. Now let's read example number 2. Seeking to utilize experience in sustainable urbanism to develop programming that educates the public in ways to reduce our carbon footprint. The second example describes how this person plans to use their skills and experience to add value to the organization by educating the public. Notice how the focus of this summary is what the candidate can do for the employer and not the other way around. Although brief, it clearly lays out key skills that make the reader want to know more. The next section after your summary is the education section. Once you've been out of college for about 3 years or so, you will find that listing your education toward the end of your resume is more common. Resumes typically list information in reverse chronological order, which means listing the most current piece of information first, followed by the next, and so on. For education, list the College of Charleston first. If you transferred from another college, list that next. You may list your high school if a substantial amount of your experience took place during that time period, or if you plan on applying to a job or internship within the school district you attended. However, you do not need to list your high school. It is understood that you graduated in order to attend college. Include information such as the degree being earned and your major or majors, along with any concentrations or minors. Include the school's name and location, as well as the month and year that you expect to graduate or graduated. Your GPA is optional. We suggest listing it if it is a 3.5 or above, but may be a requirement of the position itself. If you're listing your cumulative GPA, you only need to note it as GPA. But if you're listing the GPA for your major, then make sure you list it as major GPA to avoid any confusion. Include coursework that you've completed that relates to the job itself. For example, if you took a foreign language class or classes, and the job description indicates that those foreign language skills are preferred, include them. This is especially helpful if you do not have any other experience with foreign languages. Indicating that you completed a course will at least let an employer know that you are familiar with another language. Information such as academic awards and achievements, study abroad experiences, and involvement in organizations may either be included within the education section or within their own individual sections. Later in the presentation, we'll discuss how to tailor your resume to fit the job for which you apply. There's no single correct way to showcase your qualifications. It depends on the individual's experience and the job itself. So here's an example of how to provide your College of Charleston education information. You've got the Bachelor of Science degree in the major and your expected graduation date. When listing your graduation month and year, you may include the word expected, or you may leave it off if a future date is understood by employer when you expect to graduate. Then you list the College of Charleston, its location, which may seem redundant that you're listing it Charleston, South Carolina, but for some employers, they may not be familiar with the College of Charleston and where it's located. Not to mention there are a number of Charleston cities throughout the country. Then you can list any minors you may have, your GPA if you want to do that. And as we stated before, you could list some involvement if you wanted to, or if it's a substantial amount of involvement, you may want to include this in its own category.
All right, so let's move on to the experience section. This is the section that you'll likely spend the most amount of time on, because this is really where you get to describe how your experience and the skills that you gained in those experiences make you the best candidate for the job to which you are applying. So with this in mind, know that experience is not just limited to formal paid positions only. You may also include unpaid experiences if it relates to the job that you're seeking. So for instance, if you participated in an unpaid internship that relates to your career goals, definitely include that in your experience section. Or if you volunteered in an organization where you were able to exercise many of the skills that relate to your field, you can list those in your experience section as well. So depending on how you want to showcase these experiences, you can have multiple experience sections that have various titles, such as relevant experience or additional experience, so that you can draw the employer's attention to the experiences that align most with the position that you seek. With any of these experiences, be sure to include the title of the position that you held, the organization that it was with, and the city and the state in which you perform this work. And then you also want to include your start and end date. Your resume will likely be organized based on your the amount of time that you were in that position, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. To describe each experience, we recommend using bullet points versus paragraph form. So this really helps break up the content visually, and it encourages you to keep your content concise because it eliminates any filler words. So this allows employers to quickly and easily identify exactly what you did in each role. Rather than starting the bullet points with a phrase like, "I was responsible for," start your bullet point by directly stating what you did with a strong action verb, such as managed, advised, or communicated. In your descriptions, highlight transferable skills gained in that position and focus on your accomplishments. Even if you feel like one of your jobs doesn't necessarily directly relate to the job that you're applying for, highlight the skills that you gained that would be utilized in the job that you're applying for, such as collaboration, communication, or problem solving. Provide evidence for your claims as much as possible. Being able to demonstrate the results of your work will show the employer the value that you can bring to their workplace. Quantify when possible and explain what you did as well as how you did it. So don't just say, let's say, for instance, compiled weekly reports. Instead, you would want to say, used Excel to compile weekly reports on enrollment status for the director of admissions. So as you can see, this doesn't just say what you did, but it says how you did it. Notice in this example that there's no use of first person. Resumes are not supposed to include any personal pronouns, so avoid the use of I, my, we, you, etc. Instead, keep it objective and focus on the facts. So a lot of times we can think that we just need one good resume that we perfect and then upload it for every application. But really, each time you apply for a job, you'll need to tailor your resume to incorporate keywords from the job description. This increases your chances of the employer seeing the connection between you and the job to which you are applying. And again, we'll touch on this in more detail later on in the presentation. But first, let's look at an example of how you might incorporate all of this information into your resume. All right, so here's an example of what all of this might look like on your resume. You can clearly see a separation between the job title, the organization, and the location. You can also see the date when this experience took place. Then you see the bullet points breaking up the descriptions and clearly describing what this individual did. The first bullet point says, coordinated with team members to effectively set up and break down for the 3-day event to ensure client needs were met. So as you can see, this bullet point starts with a strong action verb. It incorporates transferable skills, such as coordinated, and it shows results because it talks about how all of this was an effort to make sure that the client needs were met. So I want to take a minute to pause. We do have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, but we've covered a lot of material up to this point. So does anyone have any questions about these sections before we move on? All right, I'm not hearing anyone just yet. So save your questions, I guess, for the Q&A. We'll definitely have a chance to address those later on. But now that you've had an exposure to the experience section, let's dive deeper into how to make a strong bullet point.
All right, so here is an example of a bullet point. This is sometimes what I might see on a first-time resume that I'm reviewing. You can see it's very brief and also pretty vague. So this bullet point doesn't tell the reader very much about your skills or your experience. So when you're writing your bullet points, it does help to think about not just what you did, but how you did it, why you did it, who it benefited, and if possible, what the result or outcome was. So let's look at a improved version of that bullet point. So if we take all of those factors into account, here is a stronger way to talk about how you created those flyers. So this new example explains how you created your flyers by using Adobe InDesign. The ability to use software like this is a technical skill that you should definitely highlight. And this example also talks about the why. So the purpose of creating the flyers was to promote awareness of sustainable practices at CofC. This adds more context to your bullet point, and it shows that you understand the bigger picture and how your work fits into that. Last, this bullet point also talks about the who. So who was your audience, or who benefited from your work? So in this case, it was College of Charleston students, faculty, and staff. So we can see this bullet point became quite a bit stronger just by adding some more detail. So let's look at another example of a bullet point. So take a moment and just think about how this could be made a little bit stronger. And then we can take a look at the new version. So this bullet point is definitely stronger. So let's break down why. This version includes transferable skills, so collaboration and data analysis. These are two things that are highly valuable in most types of jobs. It doesn't really matter what field or industry. This example also talks about the how of the task. So don't be afraid to get specific when describing your methods or the tools or software that you use to do something. This paints a clearer picture to the employer, and it shows off some of your more job-specific skills.
So now we're coming to that part we've been talking about regarding tailoring your resume. Once you create your initial resume, you will need to tailor it for each job for which you apply. Pull up the job posting beside your resume to easily identify your relevant experiences and skill sets as they relate to that job. Incorporate the keywords found in the description into your bullet points as appropriate. Only make reference to what applies to you. If the description includes a skill that you do not possess, do not highlight it within your resume. By using the keywords within your resume, you are helping the hiring manager easily see a connection between you and the job. So take a few moments to review the following job description for a project manager position that was taken from an actual job posted in Handshake, the Career Center's online job board. Identify the keywords that an applicant may use within their resume as it relates to their own experience. So the sample job description is with Berkeley County as a project manager and the Coastal Conservation League. Develop and implement a comprehensive land conservation strategy by establishing an urban growth boundary and a local conservation fund in the county. Meet with elected officials in key municipalities and counties. Represent the Coastal Conservation League and partners in a professional manner in the community. work directly with the community strategically and professionally, manage and report data input and tracking, communicate regularly with partners to further the urban growth boundary and referendum, take initiative to achieve outcomes, include campaigns, events, communications, and collaborative efforts, and provide a quarterly status report. What keywords did you identify from the job description? Keywords include develop, implement, strategy, establishing, urban growth boundary, fund, in that first bullet point. The next 3 bullet points include manage, include meet and represent, work, and with the community. And then the keywords among the last 3 bullet points include manage, report data, communicate regularly, further the urban growth boundary, take initiative, achieve outcomes, and provide a report. These skills and tasks are deemed an important part of the position, and thus what an applicant should highlight per their own experience in order to get the attention of the employer to be considered for the job. So now we have that sample job description here on the left with those keywords highlighted, and over here on the right is a sample resume taking those keywords into account. So notice that the last bullet point of the position description, provide a quarterly status report, is not identified in this resume. The individual likely did not have the opportunity to gain such experience and thus should not include it on their resume. However, other aspects should be included. For example, in this first bullet point of the job description, you can talk about develop and implement strategies to increase community involvement within the organization's cause. Also with this current job as a volunteer with the South Carolina Native Plant Society, they can talk about communicating regularly with other volunteers to effectively carry out the organization's strategies. This accounts for the second bullet point of the job description. Take initiative as a volunteer to host events aimed to promote community awareness of native plant issues, and that fits along with this next bullet point. And then when we're talking about these next 3, meeting with elected officials, representing the Coastal Conservation League, and working directly within the community, all of those fit alongside work with other organizations in the community. And then with the second to last, manage and report data gathered through conducting botanical surveys in order to shape local conservation efforts.
So up to this point, we've really addressed a lot of the sections that are pretty much required in order to show your qualifications to an employer. But as we've mentioned, there are some additional sections that you can consider including. So after your experience section, you could also include an involvement section if you'd like. So as we've mentioned before, depending on what works best for you, you can either list your involvement in your education or experience section, or you can list it completely separately in an involvement or a leadership section. In this portion, you could list your leadership positions, clubs and organizations that you are a member of, any volunteer work that you've done, and so on. You can either simply list them out as a bulleted list, or in this section, you could consider formatting them similarly to your experiences, where you include a description of what you did in each organization. Another section that you can consider including is a skills section, and a lot of resume templates or examples include a skills section. So you might feel obligated to add this to your resume, but it is optional. It's primarily designed to demonstrate your technical skills or your hard skills, not necessarily your soft skills. So should you choose to include a skills section, focus more on demonstrating the technical skills that you have, such as familiarity with various computer software systems or foreign languages. You could also include certifications that you may have earned. Soft skills are still very important for employers to see, but it's best to incorporate these transferable skills in the way that you describe your experiences rather than in a bulleted list in a skills section. This allows you to provide evidence to your claim that you possess these skills. Now that we've talked about what to include in your resume, let's talk about how to format it all. You've probably heard the rumor that a resume can only be one page, and that is correct. So as we've mentioned before, your resume is only supposed to be a snapshot of your background, not a comprehensive list of your works. So if you've held several positions or you've been heavily involved in different organizations, it can seem very challenging to limit all of your content to one page. But keep in mind that you will be tailoring your resume to each job application, which will allow you to trim down the less relevant sections and elaborate more on the experiences that relate the most. When you're creating the resume, you may try to find a template that you can just plug all of your content into. And templates can be helpful in giving you an idea of what to include in your resume and what you want it to look like. But we would caution you to be careful with templates. A lot of modern templates include sections that are discouraged on a resume. So you might see some that include photos or graphs or even an interest and hobby section. But we do discourage these different elements. Remember, this is still a formal document, so it's supposed to display your professional self, so your professional background and your qualifications. There are some industries that might allow for a bit more creativity, such as maybe a graphic design firm, but the resume is typically straightforward and clean in design. Also, a lot of templates may place limits on the elements that you're including, so it might not be quite as easy to move things around the way that you need to in order to fit everything onto one page. So all of that to say, just simply use caution whenever you're looking at templates. Your margins will typically be between 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And keep your fonts conservative. So something like Arial or Times New Roman would be appropriate. And you also want to make sure that the size is legible. So you may be tempted to decrease the size of your font in order to fit everything onto one page. And this is okay, just as long as the text is still clearly legible without having to really zoom in a good bit. It is important to maintain consistent formatting. So for instance, if you italicize your job title for one experience, be sure to do that for all experiences. Lacking consistency in formatting can give the impression that your resume maybe wasn't carefully proofread prior to submission. And having consistent formatting really does go a long way, and it helps the employer to focus more on your content. Lastly, as you prepare to actually submit the resume, be sure to save your final version as a PDF. This will ensure that your formatting is maintained across multiple platforms and software systems. So now that we've covered the logistics with formatting, let's look at an example. Let's see what it would look like on paper. There are 3 different ways that you can order your content. One is chronological, the other is functional, and then the last is a combination of both. So first, let's look at the chronological example. All right, so this is the most commonly used resume formatting. It organizes experiences, education, and achievements by the time that they took place. The contents in each section are organized in reverse chronological order. So this basically means the most recent experience is at the top and the oldest is at the bottom. Also, the largest portion of a chronological resume is typically the experience section, which you can see here in this example. And although a skills section may be included, the focus, again, is more so on the experience and the roles that you played in these various companies and organizations. All right, so this is our functional example. So the functional resume places emphasis on the skills that you possess and that you may have exercised in the past, rather than focusing on those job titles and timeframes like we saw with the other example. So here, as you can see, the majority of the content is focused on the skills that this individual has, and their accomplishments, experiences, and competencies are ordered by that associated skill. So here you can see that their skills include coding, and then they describe their different accomplishments with that, data analysis, as well as data mining. So although employment may still be included, like you can see at the bottom there is much more detail included with each skill rather than the job description. So you might be wondering, okay, how do I know which one to use? Again, usually the chronological is used most, but a functional resume can be helpful if you don't have much work experience, or if your work experience does not show a really direct relationship with your career goal, or if you have significant gaps in your experience.
So now that we have broken down the components of a resume, let's move on to cover letters. So when you're applying for a job, a resume will almost always be required to submit that application, whereas a cover letter is often an optional piece of the application. However, we would recommend to always include a cover letter if given the option. The reason for this is that a cover letter lets you directly outline your interest in the position, as well as providing specific examples of why you are a great fit for the job. And it's just a great complement to your resume. So remember, when you apply to a job, the only information the employer has about you is what you provide them. So you could just submit your resume, or you could add a personalized letter that makes a strong argument for you as a candidate. So wouldn't you rather give them more reasons to say yes? One thing to keep in mind as you write a cover letter is, just like your resume, it should be very tailored to the job. So if you write a generic cover letter and just change like the name of the company for each application, the employer will be able to tell. Trust me, I've seen them before when I have had to do hiring, and it just kind of, it shows that you haven't taken that time. If you do write a tailored cover letter, it shows the hiring manager that you've put that effort in to craft this personalized letter to them, and that's going to reflect positively on you. But if you submit a generic letter or no cover letter, it will probably reflect poorly. So when it comes to formatting your cover letter, we recommend using a separate document for your cover letter, separate from your resume. So in the past, this was mailed as a separate page along with your resume, through the actual mail. But today, most job applications are done online. So you would just submit your cover letter as a separate file. And again, we recommend a PDF to avoid any formatting issues. For consistency, it can be nice to just use the same header that you used on your resume with your name and contact information. The rest of the document should look like a formal business letter with the date, the mailing address of the company, and the name of the hiring manager included. The next slide will show an example so that you can see what this looks like. The body of the letter should consist of about 3 paragraphs, followed by a signature or e-signature at the end. So let's break down what should be included in each paragraph of your cover letter. The opening paragraph should state why you are interested in this position and in this organization. So again, this is the time to be as specific as you possibly can. You'll want to research the company as much as possible, find out, what their mission statement is, what sets them apart from other companies in their field, and make sure that you read the position description carefully. So really thinking about why this job was appealing to you, what made you click apply when you read it. In the next paragraph, you'll want to choose some key responsibilities or skills that are mentioned in the job posting. For each one, you will want to provide an example of how you demonstrated the skill or a similar task in your past experience. So think about connecting the dots between what the job requires and what makes you qualified. This is especially useful if your experience isn't as closely related to the job as it could be. This is your chance to explain why you are still a great candidate, even if on the surface it might not be as obvious. So you want to give the employer every reason to bring you in for an interview to learn more about you. The last paragraph here concludes the letter, and it reiterates that you're confident in being a good fit for the position. It details how they can follow up with you, or even how you plan to follow up with them, and just making sure to thank them for their consideration.
So please take some time now to submit any questions you may have through the chat box, and we will address them shortly. While you do this, we're going to introduce you to that resume activity mentioned at the beginning so that you can do this on your own time with the link provided. We will also share a link in the chat box to a quick evaluation that we'd like for you to please complete. The information you provide helps us to learn more about the type of information that would be of help to students as we present on this topic in the future. So just think about some questions you may have and go ahead and put them in the chat box. And while you will spend a considerable amount of time creating your resume and tailoring it to each job of interest, recruiters spend an average of 7 to 9 seconds on each resume to determine who makes it to the next step of their process. Thus, it's important to provide a snapshot of your education, experience, and skill sets using keywords from the job description to make the connection between you and the job requirements. In the next slide, you'll be given a link to an activity where you can review resumes of applicants for an entry-level customer service representative. This link was also given to you in advance with your group. The exercise will walk you through steps for determining who you would hire based only on the applicant's resume. We ask that you participate on your own time, but we'll share the link again in case. So here's that link at resumegenius.com/6-second-resume-challenge. And I'm going to continue to the next slide to provide a little more background on this exercise. So during the first part of the exercise, you will be shown a series of resumes and given only 6 seconds to determine if you will place the resume into the keep pile or the trash pile. Next, you'll be asked to review 3 resumes, and select who you will hire out of those 3. And then at the end of the exercise, there is a link that you can use to find out which resumes should have been trashed and which ones were keepers.
All right, so we are here for you guys. So if you would like personalized assistance with job searching, crafting your resume or cover letter, or a variety of other topics, we would be happy to help. So you can schedule an appointment with a career counselor by visiting our website, which is careercenter.cofc.edu, or you can contact us via email, which is careercenter@cofc.edu. So we've really appreciated the opportunity to be here with you guys today and provide this presentation. And we're excited to address some of your questions. So let's go on and transition into a time of addressing some of the questions that you have. So it looks like we do have a question in the chat box, and it says, how should you address a cover letter if the hiring manager is unknown, assuming that you made all of the efforts to find out the name of the hiring manager?
Yeah, this is a great question and definitely one I've gotten before. So in an ideal world, you'll be able to address your cover letter to a specific person. So usually what I would do is, and just to make sure that you have made all the efforts possible, is to go ahead and check LinkedIn, see if you can find anybody that's on there who might be in charge of that department, or even a level above that. You can also call or contact the company itself to ask about who you should address your cover letter to. This can actually be a great benefit because it shows that you're, taking that extra initiative and extra effort. But let's say you do all of that and you just can't find a name. What I might do is address the cover letter just to like the department that you're applying for. But again, even if you take a stab or take a guess at the name and it's actually not the right person, that's not going to be the end of the world. It's still going to show that you at least tried. So yeah, just make every effort you can, but if you really can't find anybody, that's okay too.
Great. Our next question is there any experience that might be too far back to be seen as relevant, even though you gained a lot of experience? For example, I was a preschool teacher during my gap year, but learned a lot about organizing events and communication skills. How should I go about connecting this, if at all?
I would definitely say that you need to include this, especially if it's directly related to the job that you're applying to. We talked about the resumes being in reverse chronological order traditionally, putting the most recent first and so all the way back. But sometimes you can kind of manipulate that a little bit, and we can definitely show you how by putting some more focus on that job that you had to highlight the skills that you've learned. So it's definitely something, I wouldn't lose it. And one thing I'd also recommend is as you're putting together a resume and you're not sure what to include and what not to include everything, especially if you plan to meet with one of us, because we can help you determine what to eliminate a lot easier if we can see what you've provided versus being able to kind of guess what you might have done before. So great question.
Yeah, and something I forgot to mention was it can be nice to just have a document that's kind of like a master copy of your resume where you have just literally everything you've ever done. And you can pull from this as you tailor your resume for each job. So most likely that version isn't going to be sent out, but it's going to help you keep track of everything and make sure you're not leaving anything out that could be relevant.
Right. Great. Our next question is, what is the difference between a resume and a CV? Should I make one of each? And I can address this one. So there is a difference between a resume and a CV, although they are very similar. Like we had mentioned, a resume is a brief snapshot of your experience and your qualifications, so about 1 page. But a CV is a comprehensive list of everything that you've accomplished. So it can be multiple pages in length, and it looks like we have an example on the screen here. So as you can see, there are 2 pages listed. Another thing about a CV is that it's typically used for academic type of positions. So maybe grad school, or if you're thinking about becoming a faculty member, you would most likely be submitting a CV for your application. Also, a lot of international positions require CVs. So definitely keep that in mind as you are considering submitting either a resume or a CV. So again, with that being said, thinking about how it's very academic in nature, you definitely want to include more sections such as honors and awards. If you've ever given any professional presentations, you can include that. Any professional activities that you're a part of. So it definitely includes more detail there, and you don't have to feel limited in page limit. If you are applying for something and you're not quite sure if they really want a resume or if they want a CV, it can definitely be helpful to reach out just for clarification. Because sometimes you might be applying for, let's say, a research position, and they might ask for a resume, but because it's a research position and it's more academic in nature, you might be questioning, well, do they really want the resume or do they want my comprehensive CV? So if you're ever in doubt, definitely reach out just so that you can be sure that you're submitting the right type of material. There's definitely a big difference between a 1-page document and a multiple-page document. So right now, those are the only questions that I'm seeing in the chat. If there's anyone else who has any further questions, you have time. So feel free to just jot those into the chat and we can address those.
And one thing I wanted to point out is that what can I do with this major resource that we talked about at the beginning? If you go to any page of the Career Center's website and scroll all the way to the bottom, Here's the what can I do with this major. Here's also the going global. But I'm going to go to the what can I do with this major. The majors represented here are not CofC majors. They're just general college majors, but there is a sustainability major here. And once this pops up, I'm going to show you. But these are all the different majors listed. And I'm going to go down to sustainability. And just to kind of give you a quick overview, what this resource does is it breaks everything down by the type of area in which someone could work in that field, the types of employers that typically hire, and strategies that you can be using while you're in college to prepare yourself for that field. And you can just keep looking. There's a whole bunch of information here. But on top of that, if you go all the way to the bottom, don't want to make you dizzy going all the way down here, there's a general information section which gives you a little bit more information. And then there are 4 main resources at the bottom. We talked earlier about professional associations and networking with them. You can also use these to look at what they're sharing with their professional organizations. And a lot of them will have their own job boards or information for college students. Sometimes some of them have special memberships for college students, so take a look at that. There's also the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which is a resource from the U.S. Department of Labor, and it will tell you information about what the outlook, exactly what it says here, what the outlook is for that profession, what training and education you need, what the salary typically is, and it gives you a little bit about the day-to-day of what that job is like, and you can kind of compare and contrast against other jobs that are related. Then the what can I do with this major also has a section on related resources, and it just gives you some other links to check out. And then there's also employment opportunities, and there's different job boards. And Idealist is one of the other job boards we had mentioned. This is a really good one for finding unique jobs and finding things that get you involved wherever you are. But you might want to check that out as well. And I can also show you one other resource we talked about, Handshake. This is what your Handshake would look like when you first log into your account. And if you go over to the jobs, you can search for jobs here. You can search by internship, full-time, part-time. You can search on location, and there's a number of other filters that you can search as well, and just so that you're aware of that. But if you go to the search, you can type in sustainability. And currently there are 130 jobs, and these jobs, I didn't break it down by if it's full-time or internship or part-time, so it covers all of that. But you can break it down to however, whatever you want and take a look at them. And I will say, when I checked this morning before we had our presentation start, it was like 125. So I mean, there's already been 5 more jobs posted since I looked before the presentation. So that's how fast this is happening in Handshake. But as an example, you just click on the link to the job and it tells you a little bit more about it. In this case, you're applying to their external site as opposed to through Handshake. So you have the employer has the option of leading you back to their website or having you apply here in Handshake. But it gives you different information about the opportunity, and based on how you fill out your profile, it'll let you know how closely related you are to the key things that an employer is looking for. I believe that in the student account that I'm using, I'm a communications major. And then it gives you a little bit more about background and some similar jobs that are also in Handshake. And as you'll see, you can click the save button and you can come back to that another time, or you can follow the organization if you want and be able to quickly get back to that information.
Yeah, and there's a lot you can do with Handshake, and we'll probably cover more of that in the next section or the next session, which is focused on networking in a digital age. So LinkedIn, Handshake are 2 really great ways to network, and Handshake has a lot of capabilities that let you actually interact with employers as well as other students. So that's just a little teaser tune in next time if you want all of those tips. But yeah, I mean, if you aren't already using Handshake, it's definitely a great place to start, especially just knowing that any employer who posts in Handshake, they have indicated an interest at College of Charleston. So there's already that kind of, layer removed of, not being sure if you're even the right person for the job. They are interested. So definitely check that out. And we're still adding opportunities. I will say right now, the internships that are being added, we are not approving any in-person internship that isn't paid. We don't necessarily want to put any students in an unsafe situation, although we understand that you still might be interested in doing an in-person internship, but we don't want to include anything that is unpaid just for that reason. So do you all have any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or just, unmute yourself. That's okay too.
Here, I'm gonna, let's see. We can see each other again. I'm also
Just
gonna,
really quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
oh, that's fine. I was just, Ashley, I was just gonna show, here's the link to that quick survey, and we can put that into the chat box as well. If someone can grab that, I think Camille or Emma would have a better chance of getting it in there because of.
There we go. Camille's got it in there.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just clicking that. You don't have to fill it out right now, but just click it so that you have it open, and then we would just really appreciate your feedback.
Well, thank you so much, Emma, Jennifer, and Camille, for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. It's been very informative.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Right. Well, we hope that you all have a great week, and definitely keep us in mind if you have any questions. We're very flexible about how we can meet. So we can do a Zoom appointment, we can do a phone appointment, we can even just chat over email, which is nice if you just need a resume review. We can give you feedback via email. So yeah, hope to hear from y'all soon.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
The mini internship thing, it's like Parker Dewey.
Yes.
I remember I saw that email a while ago. Is there any limit, like a expiration date almost for how long we have access to that?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I was wondering if it was just like a summer thing or something, since like subscriptions with colleges.
Yeah, I totally get that. And the cool thing about this is we're kind of working with them. So we have this landing page for CofC, but this is a resource that you should be able to access at any time, even if you're not a CofC student, for example. So yeah, I would continue to take a look at that. And I think the best results will come if you, continuously look back to see what new opportunities have been posted, and make sure you're submitting a very, tailored application, and hopefully get some great opportunities that way. For anybody who isn't sure what we're talking about, Parker Dewey is a platform that posts micro internships. This is kind of a new term that has emerged lately, where companies can post kind of project-based mini internships. These might be, just a few weeks. And these are all virtual opportunities, and they're all paid. So it's kind of ideal for, somebody who's just looking to get some experience, or you're not sure what you can do virtually right now. These might be some great options for that. So this is probably a new form of experiential learning that's going to continue.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we sign off?
For part 2 in 2 weeks, right?
Yep, part 2. Yeah, networking. So we'll be talking a lot about LinkedIn and Handshake, and other ways that you can be networking from the couch. All right, well, thank y'all so much. It's been a pleasure, and we are here if you ever need an appointment or need some questions answered. All right, well, have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Monday.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.